You know as well as I do, we've been paying rich landowners fortunes just for siting wind turbines on their land. And it's you guys in this renewable club, allied to the Michael Goves and people in the Labour Party, you've put all this upon us without ever telling us the truth. That to me is the fundamental objection here.
Well, I think you've seen broad support from both Labour voters and
Because
Conservative
they don't know they don't know the racket, do they? They don't know what they've been charged.
Well, I have no issue, as you say, with making it more transparent.
But I'm just saying, right now, people do. You know, you can produce this. I understand. I completely understand. If you ask people, you know, do you want the government to be responsible with the environment? You're going to get a positive answer. Of course you are. I'm just arguing that they haven't realised the costs that have been put upon them. But let me ask you a slightly different question. I mean, if you'd asked these people, should the United Kingdom become self-sufficient in energy, I think that too would have got a very positive response. And yet, you know as well as I do, we're importing huge amounts of gas. We're still importing substantial amounts of coal, although I do see that Michael Gove is considering very seriously this Woodhouse colliery in Cumbria being opened. How would you feel about that colliery being opened?
To be honest, I don't feel like it's a big swing on our emissions and, you know, the emissions that we have as a country. If it's going to improve our self-sufficiency, it might increase our domestic emissions slightly, but actually it's domestic rather than imported. So in a way, you could argue it would reduce global emissions. But I think the big story on energy is what the government is going to be doing on offshore wind and what the government is going to be doing on nuclear. That's where the big story is here.
But when offshore wind doesn't produce, you need something you can turn on very quickly.
Yeah.
To plug the gap. And gas is by far the best for doing this, whereas nuclear and wind don't go together in the sense that nuclear produces constant energy. And look, I'm pro-nuclear, I'm pro what they're saying, but hey, it's 10 years away, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and actually what you're saying is absolutely right around the role of nuclear energy, which generates all the time, generates electricity all the time, and then you have a mix of wind farms and gas-fired power stations. That's what we have at the moment, and then over time we need to have more of the renewables and less of the gas. But that's where the challenge is going to be. How do we ensure the lights stay on when it's not windy, when there is, when we don't want to use gas?
Should we go on being a big importer of gas, or should we produce our own?
Yeah, I think it's a perfectly reasonable expectation for us to say that we do not want to be a big net importer of gas. We're probably never going to be in a position where we're a big net exporter of gas, but I think it's perfectly reasonable for the government to say, as it has done, we are going for net zero, but that's a transition, and as we transition, we want to minimise our imports of fossil fuels.
We're heading towards net zero by not producing our own energy here and by exporting huge numbers of manufacturing jobs. I mean, the fact is the whole thing's a nonsense because global CO2 emissions are not reducing as a result of those two actions. How do we get some common sense into this debate?
Well, so what you're talking about there is moving heavy factories away from the UK to places like China. Yeah. That is absolutely not the vision of net zero that we should have. And I think that is not the vision that the government has.
It's the reality. You know, Boris Johnson boasts, you know, we've cut carbon emissions more than any other Western country. I think 44% reduction since 1990. But we've done it. You know, the steelworks at Redcar closes and it goes to India. The goods are made in India under lower environmental standards and then exported back to this country. And we think we're doing well.
Yeah, and actually, we are probably measuring it the wrong way. We should be measuring the carbon consumption of what we're actually consuming in the UK.